Hello and welcome to this 1v1 set here in the Stormgate Betas between VortiX and Mana. Spawning in on the top right side of the map, it is Mana playing as the teal color, and down south it is going to be VortiX with the purple Infernals. Couple of disclaimers before we head into this 3-game set here. So, first of all, this set has been provided to us by Frost Giant in the form of a clean VOD, which means that I am not in control of the camera, and as you see, our cameraman right now, apparently sleeping behind the keyboard, or just watching what's being discussed on the chat on the left. The second disclaimer is that this set has been played on Devastator branch of the game, which is a little outdated, but these are not games from a long time ago, so fairly fresh, but there is a new version of the game already out there. Anyway, we have a double Iron Vault opening here from VortiX. A lot of aggression coming out here from him. Double Iron Vault, of course, allows you to start making those brutes and sets you up for quite some early aggression. A very different approach is taken here by Mana, dropping the second shrine here. So, second base versus a double aggression opening here coming in. Of course, we have an Imp coming through as well here, and this is going to be likely just a... Oh, Shroudstone indeed being deployed here by our purple player, that is VortiX. I love this opening. He sees that second shrine being built, and that Shroudstone is going to act as a tower that denies that deposit. And that is such a lovely opening here for VortiX if you think about it. So much was invested here by Mana to move out towards that Luminite deposit, and with brutes coming in and a tower already set up, this is going to be very difficult here for Mana to hold. Shrine still under construction as we have double Iron Vaults being dropped at the same time as well from Mana. Imp also moving out here. With the Infernals, you can convert your Imps directly into structures. And one of the things that you can do here is drop a meat farm, which builds very quickly, and allows you to start getting some of those automatic defensive units, the Foul Hogs, out. It's going to start repelling some of this aggression here from VortiX, but still, a lot of delays caused over here by VortiX. He is completely denying this deposit. Brutes are out as well from him. It's a little difficult to teleport these units by the color, I feel. That's just my initial perception of the game. But for the time being, that Shroudstone is immensely valuable here for VortiX. A Shroudstone has been completed, or it's actually soon to be completed by Mana here next to this shrine. So he seems to be slowly stabilizing. His shrine has taken a lot of damage though. Kinda needs to fight this. He, of course, cannot afford to lose this one shrine here. Nice little dance back and forth. VortiX doubling down with 2 more brutes coming in. And don't forget, you can actually split these brutes up. And that's where they really become dangerous, splitting those brutes into fiends. We only have a handful of fiends out there right now, but VortiX as the aggressor has the opportunity to split these up. Fights still happening under this one shrine here, and there is just zero value here for Mana right now in this structure. This entire expansion is currently being shut down by VortiX. And even if you clean these brutes up, there is also going to be a Shroudstone from VortiX that keeps denying this as the shrine does get destroyed. Great value here by VortiX, completely shutting down this expansion from Mana. While we're kind of having a bit of a down moment over here as this push gets slowly cleaned up, a bit of a split up from Mana. He split up all his brutes and now he's heading to the other side of the map, quickly picking up the resource camp. He does have a lot of white health on these fiends, so they haven't yet started losing their HP, which they will eventually start doing so. So he's on a little timer with this, but I love this counterattack from him. He was pushed, his second base was taken out, but now he's got this mobility advantage, and he's just trying to counterattack VortiX over here. VortiX himself trying to work his way towards that second shrine out there. Lovely timing here by Mana. Try and slow this down. Looks like VortiX is going to have pretty much enough troops here to clean this up, so his second base will eventually be completed. So, as usual, I'm always open to feedback, especially considering that this is a fairly new game for me as well. As someone that doesn't have that much of a StarCraft background, it's obviously a bigger step as well for me compared to what it is for certain StarCraft casters. So if you have any feedback about this one, I am more than happy to read your comments, and I will try to, consider all the feedback I receive over here. It's a little difficult to cast this game from this clean VOD because there are a couple of things that make it kind of challenging. One of these is the fact that you don't actually have the names of the players written anywhere, so I just have to keep in mind who's who right now. Still no second base here for Mana, as a lot of his troops are now being infested as well, and that is something that's massive over here from VortiX. Infesting the enemy units means that when you kill them, you spawn another fiend. So fights can quickly snowball out of control, and VortiX was able to leverage that quite a bit. Looks like he's finally getting repelled, but now he's sitting back at home on 2 bases, whereas Mana is still just on 1. Finally, Shroudstone does get cleaned up, but you gotta wonder what the next step is here for VortiX. I think he might have expanded towards a 3rd base down south. We'll have to see if our observer shows that to us. For now, it looks like he's just collecting some of the camps, getting a lot of vision here with the vision camp. That's going to kind of give him that... I don't want to repeat the word vision, but he's going to have a good awareness of what's going on to the south, and indeed, that's going to be valuable because that is a 3rd, and actually, yeah, that's a 3rd base for him, and a 2nd base coming out for Mana. Mana apparently has expanded to the north as well, but I think that's just a vision camp that he has gotten, and he's got some units around there as well. So double Conclave drop coming in here. There is that kind of tech switch that we often see from the Infernals. I would assume that he's going to play into the Gaunts, which is a great unit if you want to snowball fights. It's a unit that can spread infestation as well among the enemies, and as we just discussed, infestation is something that you can use to easily snowball games. Well, it's not necessarily easy in that sense, it's more about like, hey, if you have those Gaunts out there, you start picking off those enemy units as they are infested, that can quickly snowball the fight out of control. I guess this is a good time to say, by the way, that this is my first quote-unquote live cast of Stormgate. So, yeah, just bear that in mind as I am also still somewhat familiarizing myself with the game and its features. Also, while we have a little downtime, just a bit of a disclaimer. Frost Giant obviously appreciates if you wishlist the game on Steam. I think they are in the final 2 days of their push towards their Kickstarter goal as well. So I will leave some links down in the description for you to check out. If you want to support their work, that's the best way of doing so. And if you want to support my work, then of course, liking this video, subscribing to the channel, sharing feedback, those are the best ways to do it. So, looks like VortiX is going to recommit to a lot of brutes. Remember, he actually went for double conclaves. So, we actually are starting to see Gaunts. Those are those units at the back line, those little... It kind of look like they're wielding axes, but they're actually ranged units. They do have that little bouncy attack. That's going to be very helpful once you have larger clusters of units running around, but for the time being, it's just mostly brutes from him. Of course, you can use those brutes to split up to fiends, as we've discussed. Big difference, though, between the two players is still the fact that VortiX is on 3 bases compared to Mana's 2. Technically, Mana could expand towards an additional base here, but yeah, that's kind of the main point of this game right now, I guess. VortiX, with that early aggression, shutting down that 2nd shrine, is something that allowed him to eventually pull ahead in eco. He had his 2nd shrine up a little quicker, and the 3rd one as well. Mana is now starting to move up towards the north, so when you look at the relative positions, they're kind of mirroring each other's moves so far, as some Shroud Stones are being dropped over here by VortiX. Now, this is actually a very clever move, and I love how our observer has shown this to us. This Shroud Stone is actually right next to resource camps. This means a lot of things. First of all, it means that it's going to help you fighting these guardians of the resource camps. And more importantly, it also gives you white health in the Shroud aura. And because of that, you're actually not losing any HP to those defenders. And as you see, this map has quite a lot of resource camps in the middle, something that VortiX is leveraging very well. 2nd resource camp spawning in. Mana is trying to intercept. I think he was just coming for a resource camp himself, but then he realized the VortiX is nearby, and now VortiX has some Magmadons coming in as well. Little flank coming in. Magmadon just doing a little jump and cutting through the trees. Lovely move by VortiX. Using the Magmadon to just open up a brand new pathway into the enemy base over here. as now we have a lot of Gaunts here as well. Again, Infestation is something that could be catastrophic here for Mana to face. Beautiful stun on those troops with the Magmadon. Gaunts still firing from the back line. They are kind of fragile, but momentum seems to be in the favor of VortiX here. Splitting up Fiends. But there is just not enough here for Mana. He is being overrun, and don't forget, every unit that gets killed while it's infested turns into a Fiend here for VortiX, and indeed, Mana is just going to tap out, types GG, and VortiX takes game number 1. Into game number 2 we go, and just to confuse you a little, looks like now VortiX is going to be with the teal color, and Mana is going to be in a purple. I will probably lose my mind casting this with all these color changes. I really need some sort of an indicator of who's who somewhere on the sides. Anyways, looks like a second Infernal Mirror that we have over here, as we are going to have another Iron Vault opening here by VortiX. This time it's just one, but I think he might be sending a second Imp forward as well. So he might try to do something very, very similar to the previous game. Indeed, double Iron Vaults. And there's the third Imp moving up. Same concept, you're probably going to try and drop a Shroud Stone near the enemy base. One thing we haven't discussed is that the Shroud Stone is going to generate the Shroud Aura for you as well. So it's not just a static defensive position that fires on the enemy units, it's also something that's going to give a buff to your troops, increasing their survivability. So there are a lot of things... Actually, that's a third Iron Vault. So VortiX changes things up over here. There is a fourth Imp marching up. So this is where things get interesting, and I think this is where we have to discuss how the Infernal units are made. For many RTS fans, you know, I know that Stormgate is intriguing for people of various backgrounds, and many civilizations in various RTS games work basically by producing units that cost resources for you, right? It's elementary RTS mechanics. But the way that Infernals work is that it's you actually don't spend the resources on units. Those actually just kind of start appearing as quote-unquote tickets on your buildings. And you can just spawn a specific unit once you have available tickets there. That's part of the reason why you actually see triple Iron Vaults by VortiX. That way he can actually start picking up all these unit call-ins. And that's part of the reason why he could play very aggressive in this game. Looks like a second base out there for Mana. He is going to have Shroud here, which is quite valuable. And as you see, while there is white health right now for Mana on that one Brute, there is no white health just now for VortiX. Now, one thing that's extremely important to note is that white health generates in Shroud Aura no matter who the aura belongs to. So in these fights, VortiX's Steel Brutes are also getting some of the white health recharged as they are fighting. Tower is going to get cleaned up here, so VortiX unable to secure that position. And that Shroud Stone, that defensive Shroud Stone, is going to get taken out as well. Looks like VortiX with the Teal troops heading towards the starting base here for Mana. Mana having to clean this up, another Shroud Stone having been dropped. Mana himself is also on double Iron Vaults, so he does have quite a lot of Fiends and a Brute as well. Should trade here quite nicely. Means that VortiX wasn't able to accomplish much with this aggression. Quite contrary to the previous game, to be honest. Still, VortiX is just running circles around the enemy base here. As long as you're in the Shroud Aura, you do get that white health recharged, so that's how you can essentially keep your Fiends alive. They do lose health over time, but as long as you keep them in the Shroud Aura, they just get that white health, and that's the one that gets depleted. So at the end of the day, you can keep them alive for quite some time while they are in the Shroud Aura. VortiX still just one base. You can see that on the top right of the minimap. He doesn't have a second base just yet. He's actually moving out towards the second Luminite deposit here to the south of his base. But for the time being, second base was much, much quicker here for Mana. And that's a big difference compared to the previous game. In fact, he is already switching units to Therium. And that could easily mean that we could see some Gaunts appearing fairly shortly. Another aggression coming out here by VortiX takes out the Shroud Stone. Not a lot of troops nearby here for Mana. I'm actually unsure where his troops went. He didn't have a lot of troops in the first place, but he's got a couple of Brutes coming in. Of course, he can split them to Fiends, but this is where it gets tricky. VortiX has been in this aura for quite some time, so it's actually him who has the white health, and not his opponent, Mana. Trades coming in, some more Brutes on the way as well for Mana, slowly cleaning this one up, but he's under a lot of pressure here. Another Shroud Stone coming in. Every Shroud Stone he makes costs him 1 imp, so as much as he does have a second base right now, one thing to keep in mind is that every defensive structure that he needs to invest into is essentially -1 worker. So by forcing this defense, VortiX is actually taking away some of that economic power that Mana wants to have from that second base. Still 2 bases versus 1. There is going to be another wave coming in here for VortiX. Looks like he has no desire to expand towards a second base. He's just going to play very much aggro here. You can actually see a little cluster of units rallying close to the base of Mana. Mana is just now heading out. He does have full white health right now on all these troops. I guess I've been talking a lot about white health, so this is where I probably should mention that this kind of acts as a shield. You deplete your white health first before you actually start depleting the actual HP of the troops. Also means that essentially these troops here from Mana are shielded, and they are substantially more powerful than VortiX's. Now VortiX, he tried to drop another Shroud Stone here. Actually, that's a meat farm. Meat farm's building very, very quickly, and spawning you some close-range, little, technically defensive units, but something that you can use for aggression like this, the Fellhogs. And that's the new strategy here for VortiX. He kind of realized that Shroud Stones probably take too much time to build, but he can just rush up a couple of imps, drop some meat farms, and now the Fellhogs will assist him in this battle. Still, looks like this is just not enough mana. With the fully charged defensive units, VortiX is just going to tap out of this one. Alright, game number 3 here, folks, as, you know, just a little touch here as we are heading into the next game on Jagged Maw. The observer for this one is apparently Beowulf, StarCraft commentator, also very much invested into Stormgate. Hopefully, we will have some sort of a collaboration eventually, but I had the chance to talk to him a couple of times. Very nice fella, also a PhD student like myself. Anyway, we are heading into game number 3 over here. Purple is the color for VortiX once again, just like game number 1, Mana with the teal. And this map, Jagged Maw, is somewhat different from the maps that we've seen so far. In the previous 2 maps, the players spawned in opposing corners, so the distance to cover between the 2 was much larger. Here, they spawn in adjacent corners, meaning that the distance should be much, much smaller between the 2. As you can see on the minimap as well, with those little yellow dots, in front of your base, there is a double Luminite deposit, which is immensely valuable, but it's also positioned such that it's very exposed to enemy aggression. Probably as a consequence, VortiX is actually expending, beg your pardon, that's Mana with the teal right now. He's expanding towards the northern deposit, as we do have siege camps available on this map guarded by level 2 chicken. Now, I have absolutely no idea if the chicken are just placeholders. I would assume they are. But, you know, devs might just feel like, hey, actually, it's a cool meme, and they might keep it for the full game. I genuinely don't know. One thing I do know is that people love the bread icon for supply that you can see on the UI. Speaking of which, the costing UI is somewhat broken, as you see with the Luminite, Therium, and supply indicators currently not really functioning. So VortiX, as usual, multiple Iron Vault openings over here. Worked out once in game number 1, kinda fell apart in game number 2, and Mana, second base opening, as he has done in all of the previous games so far. Looks like VortiX is expanding to the far left side of the map here, so not much aggression coming towards the enemy. In fact, he's heading towards one of these camps here. Let's see what we have on this map. There's a little siege camp. I don't think he's heading towards the siege camp though, right? Yeah, it has to be the resource camp. He's facing double brutes though. You see, resource camp has already been taken here by Mana. Second resource camp on the map is to the south. That should belong to VortiX, but looks like he tried to yoink away this resource camp from his opponent, but he wasn't really able to. Now, his fiends are very low HP, so he's trying to run circles around the enemy in the Shrine Aura, so he recharges some of that white health, but eventually he gets picked off. And now, he himself is expanding towards the second base, kind of the same mindset that we had from Mana, working towards that single Luminite deposit. A lot safer, and he doesn't really need double deposits just yet. Bit of a counterattack here by Mana with his own fiends. Looks like on this map specifically, players rely a lot more on mobility compared to the previous maps. In the previous maps, you've seen a lot of brutes, and players usually walked across the map with the brutes and then only split them up if they really needed to. But here, it's almost as if they spawn a brute and immediately split it into fiends, because they value that mobility so much. Meat farm's coming in here. Builds very quickly, and it's a great defensive structure. And a Shroud Stone as well here for Mana, so he's definitely prepared to make a stand here and defend this position, and he's waiting for the aggression from VortiX. You gotta wonder if this was kind of a bait approach here, just saying, hey, I know you're coming from me, I'm gonna play a little defensive, and I will just take out these units without suffering any casualties, make this a very efficient trade, while retaining all of my fiends and brutes so that I can launch a counterattack. Indeed, plan works out as Mana intended it. Just takes out all of those troops from VortiX, barely losing anything. At the same time, Mana also expanded towards a third base all the way to the far northeast. Down south, VortiX is still on just 2 bases for the time being. Again, mandatory disclaimer about this one, this is still one of my earlier costs. Also means that because I'm not controlling the camera, because this is just a VOD, I'm not exactly sure about the audio levels, so let me know if the audio is fine. I tried my best to balance it with my own voice, but if it's problematic, let me know. And in general, any feedback related to the costing is very much appreciated. And of course, if you want to support the game, make sure you check out all the links in the description and help out Frost Giant, you know, make their final push on Kickstarter and stuff like that. So, little sneaky moves here by Mana. You see, his fiends are slowly dropping HP, but this is where it gets scary. Speed Camp has been taken. There's actually a Health Camp to the north, but that has not been taken yet. But this is where it gets big. Brutes flanking all around. VortiX is expecting an attack, I feel. And he actually switched into a lot of Gaunts. So he started building Conclaves, and he's now going heavy on the Gaunts. Now, Gaunts can work very well, especially against mass fiends. Now, there's a health camp, so these fiends will get healed up near the health camp. But this is where you have to highlight that every time you kill an infested unit, you do get a fiend yourself. So against fragile units that are coming in large masses, Gaunts should actually work very well. Still, Gaunts themselves are fairly fragile, so you gotta be careful about microing this. As you see, it's not really a tree line, it's more like rocks, but looks like that imp is cutting through. And VortiX wants to surprise his opponent by opening a brand new pathway. I think Mana's going to realize what's going on. I think he intercepted a couple of troops, and I think VortiX has gotten himself an extra siege weapon from that siege camp. I saw something moving, which is definitely a placeholder right now, that little mangonel-looking unit. It's a placeholder that you get from the siege camp, also available in the co-op version of the game. And it's kind of devastating, to be honest. So, definitely a good tool for VortiX. He picked it up as almost a freebie, and he has cut his way through the middle. Now, units have been rallied towards the middle, and that's something that Mana has seen. But I'm actually unsure if he knows about the extent of this aggression, because this is going to be big. VortiX is moving up with a lot of brutes. He's got quite a few gaunts, and also that one siege weapon that just occasionally clips into the terrain. Smanganol kind of undefended here in this fight. Wasn't able to dish out a lot of damage, but, you know, gaunts stunned over here by the Magmadon. Magmadon coming in as well. On the other side, Infestation comes in, and that is what VortiX has been playing for, infesting all these units and then just spawning his own fiends from that. Big fight in the aura of the Shroud on the opposing side. Mana looks like he's gotten able to hold this though, I feel. He still has some of these static defenses, he still has some of those meat camps. And it looks like this is going to be enough to hold off VortiX. It's a little difficult to teleport these units by the color, but I just feel like we have a lot more teal over here than purple. Still quite a lot of fiends here for VortiX, but reinforcements, of course, coming a lot quicker here for the defender. And oh my lord, the Shrine getting intercepted from VortiX. He is being denied an expansion, and indeed, Mana is going to clean this up. VortiX actually keeps alive this one Shrine with his troops, heavily damaged, but he cleans up that aggression. His own aggression on the other side was cleaned up though, and let's not forget, Mana has been playing 3 bases for a long time. VortiX is just now dropping that 3rd Shrine. Another fight. This time around, VortiX should have no trouble cleaning this one up. So VortiX, he has a lot of these fiends, and this is something that he could use to raid, something that he kind of needs to do, because when it comes to worker count, he should definitely be behind, just based on the fact that he's been on 2 bases compared to 3. With this current spec UI not giving us any kind of an information about the exact supply for these players, it's a little difficult to tell who has an economic or even military advantage, but you probably expect Mana to have the eco lead right now, and that's part of the reason why VortiX kind of needs to make something happen. So new Magmadons coming in here as well for Mana. VortiX is also mixing in his own Magmadons, which actually are very effective units if you want to take very quick engagements and just annihilate the enemy army in 3 seconds. They can jump into the battle, stun the enemies, and that's all the window you need to quickly dish out a lot of punishment. And don't forget, infested units do convert into fiends. Indeed, here comes the stun, and that stun is immensely valuable, buying a lot of time for these Gaunts to start picking up units and turning them into friendly fiends. Still, numbers looking a lot better over here from Mana. More teal than purple on the screen. VortiX, shorter route to reinforce though, and it looks like he might be able to repel this one. Indeed, Mana's gonna have to fall back through this narrow opening. VortiX launching the counterattack. Mana himself has a lot of static defenses, but this is a massive force, and Mana doesn't seem to have a lot. He can still split these brutes, and he also has a Magmadon that he could use to stun the enemies. Uses it to stun a little, but the numbers just looking way too good here for VortiX, and this can easily snowball out of control with many of the units from Mana getting infested and then turned into friendly fiends for VortiX. Now he's going to push this expansion base, and VortiX, despite being down in terms of base count for a long time, and probably worker count as well, it looks like he is taking momentum here, and now he's able to hit this expansion base. Slowly getting cleaned up, new brutes arriving to the front. Is there a second wave behind this for VortiX? That's the big question. I feel like his Gaunts are actually dishing out a lot of punishment over here in this very heavily choke-pointed position. That bouncing attack is actually immensely valuable in this fight. Magmadon coming in to reinforce, but gets surrounded immediately, and now those defensive towers are just getting taken out by VortiX. Those static defenses no longer a thing here for Mana. Shrine also getting focused down. VortiX looks like he is just going to annihilate this base. You have a lot of fiends here for Mana, but VortiX just does not care. He wants to do that eco damage, and he's definitely doing so. He's taking out key buildings, so much so that Mana is going to tap out of this one and call it a game. With that, this one set ends, and so does my first quote-unquote official commentary of Stormgate, a game I'm extremely hyped about. Obviously, I'm still in the process of learning things and just getting accustomed to the space of the game as well. Again, if you have any kind of feedback related to this video, audio balance, commentary style, anything that comes into mind that could be helpful for me, I greatly appreciate if you let me know in the comments. Of course, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, then make sure you press a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Those help me greatly. I post out regular AoE 4 commentaries, that being my background game, but as I announced fairly recently, I will be focusing a lot on Stormgate when it comes to commentary, and hopefully I will be involved in the first major Stormgate tournament as well, coming in early February, EGC TV Stormgate Open. It's going to be a big one, it's going to be a fun one, and I will probably cost some sets from the early rounds, if nothing else, but stay tuned for that. Again, I greatly appreciate any feedback. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next cast.